Okie dokie. Just check in. Audio. Get my blue lens glasses on. Just doing a sound check. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You're low.
I'll bring it up.
Pardon?
I'll bring it up.
Yeah. How you doing, Lance? You all right?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Good. Hey, James.
Yes.
There's the man.
How you doing, James?
Good. How are you, Lance? Good to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Good.
I'm gonna get a better mic. This one's not clicking in.
Yeah, your volume's kind of low.
Chamomile.
Oh, I have black tea. Keep me
That's
up
like,
for a couple more hours.
like English tea.
It's an English black.
Mm. Well, like English tea, because being English, I would have with milk in it. So you have it with milk in?
I have it with milk in it. I prefer tea with milk in it.
Oh, so that's like an English person.
Wait, a few generations back, maybe. Not me.
So I know we got a bunch of people coming in tonight. I'm not sure. I think there ended up being about 30 odd people registered actually. Okay. Now I believe these are all chiropractic officers, James, and we will start on the hour. And I think it will be useful. So we've got this session in the can to get up to date with what's going on. In terms of, I know everything's changing every 6 hours right now.
Yeah.
So this will be useful to have in the can to be able to have to then go out to our entire database and say, look, here's the updates as of this date. So anything that you want to add beyond the questions that's relevant to any updates, because I know you're up burning the midnight hour with your team working on all these changes, which is crazy.
Sure.
How on earth does a private individual think they can navigate this stuff when your team of 6 are finding it difficult? You know, I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it, really?
It is. It's amazing. And it's amazing how quickly it keeps changing and how we'll get additional guidance on particular items, and it contradicts previous statements that they've made. So it's changing very rapidly, and it's been a challenge to keep up with everything.
Crazy. So you sent through a spreadsheet, Lance. You've got that spreadsheet. Just fire to just start firing away. You can just go through that spreadsheet.
Those questions.
Yeah.
Can you hear my mic?
Yeah, it's much better.
Yes, that's great. So if we are on the nearly on the hour, so you've got that spreadsheet. You know in what order it is. We've got 60 minutes. Let's just fire away as many questions as we possibly can. And then we can get this video out to the rest of your group that's maybe not attended as a replay, and we can leverage the same for our own groups. So it's you know, repurposing the content's great, as I say, because of the volume of updates that have happened. And I got an email in from one of your colleagues, which I can ask those questions.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're on the 7th. I don't think we need to go through any introductions other than I'm going to be moderating and helping with tech. Lance is going to be asking the questions, and the subject matter expert James is with us. And let's have a 60-minute fast marathon Q&A session.
It's like a game show.
Yeah.
Here we go. Are you ready? Cool. I do want to just open up with thank you so much for you guys taking the time to do this. You know, the chiropractors are out there, service-minded, oriented, wanting to do their best to help as many people as possible. And something like this comes in and complicates the situation. And all of a sudden we have to let go of our service hand for a moment and put our full grip on our business hand. And I think leaning on professionals and experts who know and are on the front lines at the government level and at the business level just lets us kind of trust that there is more than we can possibly know personally. So let's just dive in. Thank you guys for taking the time.
Sure thing.
All right. So just getting started, how and where do we apply for assistance? What are the first steps?
That's a great question, because there's multiple levels of assistance at the federal and the state and sometimes city levels. So we've got an SBA disaster loan that can be applied for directly through the SBA. We've got a forgivable 7A SBA loan that's opening up Friday. That's going to go directly through banks, through lenders, through their process. The state and local programs are all through the state and local websites. So, you know, there's both loans and grants at the state and city local levels, and they all are applied for separately and differently because they're all different programs.
Great.
And
In
we
addition
do
to
have
unemployment. Yeah.
we have a full resource guide playbook, which we need to get to your guys. So after this, we'll give a link, and then you can get access to James for those people that might want James's help, because he has a full team of people that just do this like this. Or there's a resource playbook, which is James has put together, all step type of thing.
That playbook has the links to every state, city, even some of the private relief programs that are out there right now.
Cool. I got a link to the replay after the last webinar. I don't remember getting a link to the playbook though, so that'd be nice to also be able to.
It's actually on the same. It's in the same page.
In the same.
Yeah, it's at the bottom of that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on
so
the bottom.
If you see the replay,
page.
keep scrolling down past the replay and find that. Great.
But I'll get an email out to your folks, and then you've got it. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Next question. I am the owner operator of a small LLC on the side. I personally rent a space for the business. How do I take a loan out to pay the rent?
Good question. So as a sole proprietor, as small LLC would most likely you'd be self-employed on the side. So you can qualify for both the economic injury disaster loan as a sole proprietor or self-employed, which will qualify you for that up to $10,000 grant as part of the EIDL. And then as self-employed, you can also apply for the 7A forgivable loan. So to the extent you use that for self-employment earnings or rent, that could be partially or fully forgivable as well.
Is 7A forgivable the same as PPL?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, the Paycheck Protection Program, 7A, forgivable loan, that's all the same thing.
Awesome. All right, next one. Best ways to make it through COVID-19 as a small business.
As a small business. Yeah, that's a great question. Like I've had, well over 100 conversations with small businesses this week. Yeah. And what I tell people, the loan program, the grant, whatever the resource is, the goal here is to get cash. We don't know what the next month is going to be like. We certainly don't know what the next 3 months are going to be like. Hopefully, we can be optimistic and it's going to improve. But I think the important thing is to get a lifeline in your business, whether it's to help employees stay on payroll or whether it's to help you cover rent or whether it's to help you survive, longer than we think this is going to last. The important thing is to get some resources in so that you can survive and weather this, and your business is going to be operational, when we come out of this and start to rebuild.
Mm-hmm. Should I pay myself this month before applying for unemployment, or not pay myself, keep the money in the business and apply for unemployment?
That's a good question. So the unemployment, I'm not sure how they're calculating that right now for self-employed, because that's a kind of a change to the unemployment calculation. To the extent of whether you pay yourself, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure the answer to that. I think you could pay yourself and still apply right now. And I think it's going to depend on, what you need the money for. What's your 30, 60 days of what you need money for in the business? So if you have to pay rent, your landlord's not cutting you any slack on rent. You've got 2 months of rent coming up. Maybe you leave at least enough to cover business expenses for 60 days, get a loan if you need to, and then apply for unemployment. You can apply for unemployment and the economic injury disaster loan and that up to $10,000 grant. So it's not exclusive.
What sort of proof do I need to provide that the money is going toward rent? I imagine you're talking about the loan.
Yeah, so that I'm going to guess that's we're talking about the forgivable loan, because the forgivable loan can be forgiven if it's spent on payroll costs, rent, utilities, or mortgage interest for business property. So once that loan is funded, it opens up an 8-week window where if it's spent on those expenses, it can be forgiven. And there's actually going to be a package, like an audit package, that has to be delivered to the lender to substantiate that those expenses were spent on allowable expenses, and then it will be forgiven.
Nice. Is it a problem that my business has already been impacted and the rent owed is beginning for March 2020? What specifications need to be met for rent?
So in the guidance that I've seen, and there's still, the SBA is still creating the new SOPs this week for the EIDL and for the 7A. So we don't have clarity because they don't have clarity right now. But everything I've seen so far is that it's going to be rent paid in that 8-week window. So once the 7A loan is funded, there's an 8-week window, and then whatever rent payroll is paid in that window. I haven't seen anything that says you can't prepay rent. I haven't seen anything that says you can't pay past due rent. It just has to be spent on rent. So they may come out with, again, like Craig was saying, it changes every 6 hours. But as of right now, it just needs to be spent on rent.
Yep. What is the minimum criterion for approval, i.e. personal credit scores, time in business?
No time in business. You just have to have been operational as of March 9th. And then credit scores, they're looking for 640. But I've also heard that's case by case, where if you have a well-performing business that's collateralized, then the 640 might not be as much of a factor. But again, we don't have a lot of explanation as to how they're going to underwrite these loans. They have said for the EIDL that they're looking for 640 or better. I don't know if that's going to be relaxed.
Yep. This one, I might have to add context to it. How does the CARES Act impact help recent graduates? So some chiropractic students will have graduated. They have not gotten a job yet. They're between either waiting for their license, or maybe they had a job, but now the job's no longer offered to them. Where do they stand if they don't own their business yet, or they are now just kind of floating? After school got out, the loans may have taken a break. They no longer have a loan check coming in. Now they don't have a job waiting for them. How do they apply for unemployment if they didn't have a job and all this?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work with unemployment. I'm definitely not an unemployment expert, so I can't say, if there's going to be benefits for unemployment. I don't know how that's going to work with a student. I do know that there's relief, at least on the federal student loans. So you can, some of them I think you can do directly on the website, get a deferral. Some you have to call and get a deferral if it's a federal loan. But as far as earning income or unemployment, I'm not certain about that.
Yeah, I can speak to Nelnet was my loan, and they deferred just through the website. You have to go on, ask, do you want to confirm? And then I even added some details. So I can keep you guys posted from what I hear from my lender. For those people who are floating, what type of a financial professional would you have them seek? Do they need a CPA now just to figure stuff out financially? Do they need a book? Well, where would you guide them for a resource? Reach out to you personally to have a conversation about their situation?
Sure. So, yeah, we've approached it several different ways. One is, and some people prefer to just do it themselves. If you're sophisticated and you want to try this, that's fine. We've got the resource packet that Craig will help everybody get, along with the recording, where you can apply and submit your own packages for the loans. Obviously, unemployment, you're going to do that yourself. There's also some other benefits that we'll probably get into at some point, but you can go to loan. You can reach out to your current accountant, tax preparer. I've heard some attorneys are doing it. There's also people just doing this type of consulting, helping you with the benefits and the loan packages. My firm is a full service accounting and tax firm, and we started helping clients, and then we branched out, with education, just helping others. But we also offer opportunities to work with us, and we can manage the whole process if that's what you'd like.
Cool. And if someone's floating in that netherland, finding help would be a good idea for them, imagine.
Yeah. There's just so much, and President Trump, announced yesterday that they expect another $2 trillion package. So this one is super confusing. The CARES Act was confusing. The Families First Coronavirus Act was confusing. And now we're going to add another $2 trillion act to that. So it's just going to be continued craziness. So yeah, I think that it helps to have somebody that is really focused on this that can keep you, in good shape.
Cool. Next question. Do I apply for loans through the government directly or through an approved SBA lender?
It depends on which loan. The economic injury disaster loan is going to be directly through the SBA website. And that's also where you're going to request that up to $10,000 grant. The 7A, which is the forgivable loan or the paycheck protection program, that's going to be through a lender, and it has to be through an SBA approved lender. Over the last week, we realized how lenders are going to get slammed by this. So we've gotten some relationships where we can streamline that process with lenders as well.
Cool. What do you do if you are in your first year of business, have a complete loss for that year, and have not yet filed your first Form 1065? But are still making regular office payments, rent, utilities, advertising costs?
Yeah, so the EIDL, I would get on that first because it's based mainly on operating expenses, and if you're up and operating, that's going to count towards being able to apply for that loan. Again, you need that credit score of 640, from what we understand, and then you can apply for that. I would get that in process. If you don't have self-employment earnings and you don't have payroll, you don't have employees on payroll, then it's going to be difficult to qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program. So the EIDL is probably going to be the best bet applying for that.
Do you think it's still worth them applying for it and then getting denied?
Which one? The EIDL?
If they, in that situation you just mentioned.
So you can, we're still trying to get guidance on the EIDL. The EIDL, you can apply for that and request the up to $10,000 grant. That grant is supposed to be dispersed within 3 days of it being assigned to a loan officer. And then if you're denied for the actual loan piece of it, you keep that grant portion. You don't have to return that grant. So yeah, you would at least get that money. That would be, some help to the business for sure.
Great. Are there any state or city SBA loans on top of federal that we can take advantage of?
Yes. Every state, I think, pretty much has their own loan program or grant grant program. We've got those links in the document. And there are a lot of cities, like New York City has their own program. San Francisco, a lot of the bigger cities have their own programs in addition to that, in addition to some of the private programs as well. But I've heard, especially like New York, New Jersey, like that money's going fast.
Yep.
I've got one that's relevant just now. What if you don't spend all the funds from the SBA or the EIDL loan after the 8 weeks? If there's dollars left over, if there's dollars left over, does that mean the money will need to be repaid?
It's not required to be repaid. You can continue paying operating expenses with it. But if you get 6 months out and we're back in good shape again, and you decide you don't want that money, you just want to pay down the loan, there's no prepayment penalty, so you can pay down the loan.
Nice.
Okay.
How to apply for small business loans grants to cover payroll overhead for the next month or two?
Yeah, again, I'd start with the EIDL loan directly through the SBA, request that advance grant, and then if you have payroll, then the forgivable loan, the Paycheck Protection loan is good. That's calculated. The maximum loan amount is calculated on payroll, so that's why you need payroll to qualify for that loan, and then that's a forgivable piece as well.
Okay, and some of these questions might seem redundant for those listening, but having gone through this webinar once, I heard some questions that seemed redundant, and it was just validating if I actually could guess the answer in advance. So I'm going to keep reading questions, even though it might seem like they repeat sometimes. Any loan info for solo practitioners?
Yeah, so solo practitioners would qualify. It depends on how they're set up. So if it's a solo practitioner that's self-employed, those self-employment earnings would qualify. You'd obviously have expenses, so you'd qualify under the EIDL with the advance grant. But self-employment earnings also qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program instead of employees. So you would calculate using self-employment earnings instead. So as long as that's the way someone's set up, that works. You're going to be on like your individual tax return. If you have a separate corporation or a C corporation, then there would need to be payroll to qualify. Like you would need to be paying yourself on payroll out of the corporation. So it depends a little bit. It's a little technical on how the business is set up.
Mm-hmm. Next one is applying for loans as a business owner. And this, I imagine, is SBA.gov/disaster, or is there some other place that they could go?
Yeah, for the EIDL, you're just going to apply for that, the loan and grant on the SBA, like you said, SBA.gov/disaster. The forgivable loan, the paycheck or the PPP loan is going to be through a lender, an SBA approved lender.
How can I collect unemployment? imagine they're just talking about process, where to start.
Yeah, that's state by state. It's what's today, Wednesday. So states should be getting their processes caught up to be compliant with the CARE Act. The CARES Act did change the process so that there's, everybody has to have partial unemployment, and then they're adding the 600. So it's going to be state by state. The states should be getting up to speed, and I think we've got the links to the states for unemployment as well, but that's just going to be on your state unemployment website.
Okay. Next one, do small businesses like Kairos get any funding? Yes, you just have to apply for it. How do we go about getting the loan from the CARES Act? I'll let you say it again, just so it's clear. But
Sure. So the CARES Act is the loan that authorized is the PPP loan, the Paycheck Protection Loan, or the 7A loan, and that's going to be an application process through an SBA approved lender.
Great. Next one seems like a silly question, but he has a really good answer for this one. How do I get free money?
How do I get free money? So yeah, it's there is free money here. The advance on the EIDL could end up being free money. If for some reason you don't qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program loan, maybe you don't have the credit, or for some reason you don't qualify for that loan, there's a $10,000 employee retention credit. So that's essentially free money because it's a credit against taxes that you would normally owe. You're also able to take money out of your retirement penalty free right now, up to $100,000. Either you could take a withdrawal from an IRA or a loan from a 401k without the early penalty. So that makes sense, I think, in some cases. And not necessarily free money, it's your money, but you get it penalty free.
Mm-hmm. This question, what are the differences among the offerings? I think you've said it multiple times. If there was like a clear and concise, here's the major differences between these things. And this is, we sent out the previously recorded webinar, and this is very easy to follow along with. If you haven't watched it, if I would recommend you go back and watch it in case you didn't catch it.
Yeah, we've got the slides on the other webinar, which is great,
yeah.
Where we can show the differences. But the main differences, I'm going to say we're talking about the two loan programs. The main differences there, the EIDL or the 7B loan is a 30-year term, 3.75% interest rate, and it's based on operating expenses. We're not certain exactly, but we've heard somewhere around 2 to 4 months of operating expenses is going to be what that loan is based on for the amount. And it has that grant piece, that advance or grant piece in it. The 7A or the Paycheck Protection Program loan is based on 2.5 months of average payroll. So that's going to be the maximum loan amount. We heard yesterday that loan is going to be at 0.5% interest and probably a 3-year term. We heard at first it was going to be up to a 10-year term, but we think it's going to be a 3-year term at 0.5%, but that's got the forgivable piece. So once that 8-week window opens up, if you spend it on payroll, rent, utilities, then you've got that forgivable piece on the 7A loan.
Great. What are the documentation or requirements for the loan?
So each one's different. The EIDL loan starts with a pretty simple application on the website. Then it goes to the loan officer, where you're going to be required to submit tax returns for the business, tax returns for the owner, personal financial statements, schedule of liabilities for the business, and then it's called Form 4506, which is authorization for SBA to get transcripts, tax transcripts for both the business and individual. So that whole package needs to be put together and sent to them. On the Paycheck Protection Program, they're going to want to see payroll records. They want to see head count at 12/31. They want to see head count at, I think it's 2/15, February 15th. And then substantiation for rent and those other items.
Right. Included in the CARES Act is expansion of eligibility for self-employed to receive unemployment benefits. What are the pros and cons of doing this?
So the pros are, if you're an employee or self-employed, you get additional benefits, which is certainly helpful right now. You get the $600, and you also can get partial benefits. The con to that, which I've had that conversation many times this week, is that there's additional benefits, are causing a lot of employees to say, you know what, I can make more money if I stay home rather than coming back to work. And that's a real conversation that business owners are having with their employees right now that don't want to come back to work.
Yeah. I hope chiropractors out there aren't going to have that problem because everyone loves their job so much.
Right.
How and where to apply for the best grants and loans?
Yeah, so it's going to be, unfortunately, it's kind of fragmented right now. The SBA is the place, the website we talked about earlier is the place to go for the EIDL. The Paycheck Protection Program or the 7A loan is going to be through the lender. And then the states have the individual, state loans and grants. And then the cities have their own websites for their loans and grants. So we've got all those links for you in the document, but unfortunately it's very fragmented how you go about applying for them. There's no like centralized place.
I might be putting my own tone on this question, but for context, chiropractors have heard of this mythical get your loans forgiven if you volunteer in a nonprofit for 10 years. And that happened 10 years ago, and the first round came up this year, and we're starting to hear rumors that people aren't getting their loans forgiven and all of this. And this question is, what are the actual chances of forgiveness happening?
Right. Yeah. So they didn't make it easy. There's some calculations that go into that forgiveness. 75% of it has to be spent on payroll. Then the rest can be spent on rent and utilities. So there are some hoops that you have to jump through. Once that loan is funded, once you get funding for the 7A loan, it opens up an 8-week window of time that you have to spend for those expenses to be forgivable. The question is, if you get funded in 3 weeks and we're not operational yet, and we eat up 3/4 of that 8-week window without spending the money on payroll, does anything get forgiven? We don't know right now. Are they going to extend the window? Are they going to go, offer some additional benefits? We don't know. So it is possible. The good part of that is that the loan is 0.5%, and there's no prepayment penalty. So if that happens and it's not forgivable and you don't want the debt, just pay it off.
Yeah. Can we get financial help for lost business that we experienced during coronavirus shutdown? If so, how do we calculate how much and what documentation do we need to provide?
Yeah, that's sort of a misconception that there's funding for lost revenue. None of the loans are based on lost revenue. It's all based on need for operating expenses. That's what the EIDL is based on. It does a calculation off of the operating expenses of the business to continue to meet those. And then the Paycheck Protection Program is based on average payroll. And it's 2.5 times your monthly average payroll for the last 12 months. So neither is really based on lost revenue.
And so a follow-up question is, the documentation you're going to need when you apply is 12 months of payroll?
Yes. Yeah, you need financial statements plus the payroll reports.
Yeah. Let's see. If Kairos have to shut down their offices like most in Colorado, should we apply for unemployment?
Yeah, if you're self-employed, I would recommend filing for unemployment as well as filing for submitting for the loans.
Yep. It appears that unemployment is based on weekly income. How is this assessed, and do they take into consent growth trajectory?
They will not take into account growth trajectory. I'm not exactly certain how for self-employed they're calculating. Because like I said, I'm just not an unemployment expert, so I don't know how they're calculating self-employment. I know they have to include it, but I'm not sure what the calculation is.
Mm-hmm.
If I may just jump in, Lance, because you're going from the questions that were pre-event. I've got some questions coming through that are probably relevant to the existing conversation. So this one, I filled out some of the PPP application today. Is that only payroll or on that application? And then do I need to do a separate one for rent and utilities cost?
No, it'll just be one application, and they'll just ask for payroll on that application. The ones that I've seen so far, they ask for payroll and gross sales. The EIDL, they ask for gross sales, and they ask for cost of goods sold.
Okay.
But only one application per business.
Can I apply for unemployment? Can I apply for unemployment if I'm a sole proprietor, seeing clients 1 day a week instead of 4, and have significantly lowered income?
Mm-hmm.
What will I qualify for if the business still has some income?
Yeah, so you, as a sole proprietor, you can't apply based on lost revenue, but you can apply based on decreased revenue and decreased earnings.
So
So
if
I
you've
don't
got,
know what the calculation is going to be, but you can apply based
so
on
just to
reduced earnings.
just to clarify that, if you're sole operator, one person operation, and you were doing $10,000 a month, round figures, and now you're only doing 3 or 2 or
Yeah,
none.
you can apply for unemployment. I just don't know what that calculation is. But
So
the CARES Act allowed reduced unemployment, because it used to be in a lot of states that there was only you're employed or you're not employed, and that's how they calculated unemployment. The CARES Act requires partial unemployment to be covered in all states.
And the last question right now is, what if you laid off an employee on, let's say, middle of March and don't intend on rehiring them right away when getting back into practice, but will hire a new person in a few months?
The new person's okay. The part of what they factor into the forgiveness calculation is headcount by the end of June 30th. So if your headcount's 1 and it used to be 1, then that's okay.
It doesn't have to be the same person then.
It doesn't have to be the same person. It just has to
Okay.
be the same headcount.
Right. Go ahead, Lance. That was it.
While filling out the application, I see that they want us to sign in ink. Do I actually need to print out sign in ink and send fresh, or can I electronic signature?
I'm not sure which application that is. The new process, they did want some signed in ink, but for the SBA process, they've now shifted back to an online application. It's a simplified application that does not need to be signed in ink.
Cool.
The 7A loan, if you download the application, it needs to be signed in ink, but there's banks that are doing that application online as well.
Great. What are the limitations of utilization of funds?
So the 7B EIDL needs to be used for operating expenses, and the 7A, for it to be forgiven, needs to be used for payroll, rent, utilities, mortgage interest on a business property. It can be used for any operating expenses, I believe, but to be forgiven, it needs to be used on those categories.
What are the interest rates, repayment periods going to look like?
So the EIDL 7B loan is up to 30 years at 3.75%. The payments are deferred for 6 to 12, minimum 6 months, up to 12 months. The 7A PPP loan is, as of right now, it's a 0.5%. And at first they said up to 10-year repayment, but now they're saying 3-year repayment at 0.5%, or unless it's forgiven.
Cool. Resources for keeping employees on payroll. I imagine that's the PPL.
Yeah, the PPL is going to be the best set for that.
Yeah. Best person to work with SBA forgiveness stuff, a local banker, a CPA, online loan service like Fountainhead, James, Rainwater.
Yeah, any of those, what works for you. We have a full service package. We're partnered with Fountainhead right now, so we can work with them as well. And if you have an accountant, reach out to them, or if you decide to go on your own. But if you want us to manage that for you, we certainly can.
Is there a provision for refinancing student loans?
No, I know there's a deferral provision, but not, you definitely can't refinance them into any of these loans.
Okay. Is the funding a smarter option rather than taking a tax credit for 2020?
I would go with the funding because it puts cash in on the balance sheet now, and that gives you flexibility, just because there's so many unknowns in the next few months.
Cool. This next slew of questions is going to be kind of themed as new businesses. If I've only owned my business 5 or 6 months, am I less eligible for unemployment or other benefits?
Not that I know of. And with the loan programs, there's no minimum period that they have to be in business. With the traditional SBA loans, you have to have a track record and or very well collateralized and personal guarantees. That's not the case here. And then for unemployment, I'm not certain how those calculations work.
Cool. The next two is similar. Does being open under a year affect anything? Seems like no.
No.
Do new business owners what do they do for help? I opened my doors February 3rd. I'm unsure if I qualify for loans or grants. Seems like you would.
Yeah.
What are the rules in regards to businesses that were launched within the last 6 months? Same thing. How does this affect someone who opened recently? I graduated in 2019. We haven't taken a salary yet, only distributions to pay back what we contributed.
Okay, so that would kind of depend on how the business is set up. If it's a partnership or self-employed, then if there's any income there, they may not have taken money, but if it's a pass-through entity or self-employed, there may still be income there to claim for the PPP. If it's an S corp or a corporation, that may not work, but they should still qualify for the EIDL in either case.
How do we calculate losses for our newly opened office?
It's a good question. So traditionally the way, and there's a benefit to this too, so it's a great question. If there's losses, you're just starting in 2019, and let's say, you started mid-year getting everything set up, then revenue in maybe November or December, but for the year there was a loss. It's going to be the extent of expenses that are greater than the revenue for the year. Part of the CARES Act is a net operating loss carryback. With the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that was signed into law in 2017, they eliminated loss carrybacks. And if you had a loss in your business, you could just carry it forward and offset income as you went into future years. What the CARES Act did was added a 5-year carryback. So if you had a loss in 2019, but maybe personally you had income in 2018, you can take that loss from 2019, amend your 2018 return, reduce that income, which would in turn lower your tax, and you would get a refund from 2018 if you go back and amend. So losses can be very valuable right now.
Great.
A little technical, but worth the effort if you have those losses.
And that brings up something else. Just if you haven't filed 2019 yet, would you use financial statements to do that?
Yeah, for the loan packages, if you haven't filed 2019, they would require the financial statements instead.
I'm about to start my own practice. How does the CARES Act impact potential new businesses?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no benefit if you weren't operational in March. Yeah, unfortunately.
I am negotiating with a landlord that the negotiation began before the COVID incident, but we haven't signed any paperwork. Does this allow me to use the funds for rent in the new space?
If you can qualify, the difficulty is that you're not going to have that history of expenses to qualify and show for the EIDL.
Okay. Can I apply for both the EIDL and the PPL?
You can apply for both. You can be approved for both. The PPL will be reduced to the extent that you have a loan under the EIDL. So you can either reduce your benefit or reduce your loan under the PPL by the amount of the EIDL, or you can refinance the EIDL into the PPL and then have that whole portion refundable, potentially refundable.
What expenses would qualify under the forgivable category?
Forgivable is going to, yeah, I said refundable, I meant forgivable. So the forgivable category is going to be payroll, rent, utilities, and mortgage interest on business properties. Now, I'll caveat that because I know a lot of chiropractors have home offices in certain situations, and I know some of my clients do. If you have a home office or you have an office in your home, so it's your personal residence mortgage, we're saying you can use that home office portion where you can allocate mortgage interest to the business, and then that would be part of the forgivable piece.
How are you pacing, Lance, in terms of through those big spreadsheet that you have?
Yeah, we're cruising.
Are
about halfway?
Okay, can I just jump in with a couple of mine?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so just a couple that have just come in, James. For sole proprietor, how do you document an owner's draw versus the income to practice for the EIDL or the PPL loan?
Yeah, so I believe it's going to be based on earnings. So it's going to be based off of the financial statements, that net income from the financial statements, more so than the draw itself, because the draw, could feasibly be lower than the profit. So, to the self-employed's benefit, you can use that net income.
As an associate employee practicing under reduced income, Does that qualify for partial unemployment, same as sole proprietors under the CARES Act?
Yes.
What about personal residence if you rent and have a home office?
Yep. The same exercise I
Okay.
just walked through. You'd use that calculation to apportion it.
Okay, this was from Katie, because I know she emailed me a few questions which I'd like to get covered.
Mhm.
How do we register or apply for SBA loan that may be used for payroll, employees, rent, utilities, etc., which may get forgiven into grant?
That's going to be the 7A loan that the application is going to go through a lender. I can go through your bank if you have a contact, or through
Right.
a SBA lender.
You probably answered some of these questions, but again, for repeated purposes, if we qualify for loan, do we have to use the money and withdraw it?
You don't have to, no, and there's no prepayment penalty, so it can be paid back if you don't use it.
Is it better to wait a few months because more grants will come out rather than just to jump on a loan that we have to pay back?
So
I guess we don't.
that's a good
I guess we
question. We
don't.
just don't
Guess we
know.
don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, with so many unknowns and the risk of that, I just think it's a good idea to have, cash on the balance sheet to be prepared.
And the next question from Katie as well. For the PPP options to pay employees, does the employee have to have been employed with me prior to this COVID-19 situation, or can the employees be hired to start in April? I had planned to hire a person who moved to the States for the job starting in April and still plan to move forward with that. Just wondering if the PP will apply to her if the start date is beginning of April.
So if there was payroll prior to that,
It's just the numbers, isn't it? How many you had before, how
yeah,
many you had after?
yeah, she would need to have a history, over the last 12, at some point over the last 12 months of payroll to qualify to do that calculation for the maximum loan amount, and then who you have now and going forward. As long as the head count is the same or higher, that doesn't matter. And then you pay the payroll during the 8-week window to get it forgiven.
Okay. All right, very good. Lance?
Great. If we lay off employees and they do not receive their full salary amount, can we use PPL to go back and cover the difference?
That I'm not sure. So I think you could, at any time you can hire them back and use the PPP to cover their payroll. I'm not sure how it would affect their unemployment benefits.
And if you paid them the difference above and beyond, like if you bring them back before June 30th, right? That's the deadline, the cutoff to bring them back.
No, so, well, yeah, that's the deadline for the head count.
Okay.
But they would need to be paid during that 8-week window, starting with the funding of the 7A loan for it to be forgivable.
So they have to be paid they have to be paid before June 30th?
They have to be paid within that 8-week window.
From when
They
you
have to
receive the
be,
loan.
and they have to be on payroll to be in the head count by June 30th.
Okay.
Right. It's a little complicated.
Yeah. Let's see. PPL, is there a catch? This seems like free money. Yeah. I mean, just for redundancy, we'll say it like the PPL. Is there a catch? This seems like free money.
Well, so nothing's ever free, right?
Yeah.
And we've got probably the lowest tax rates we've ever seen in our country. So don't get too attached to those low tax rates, is what I'll say.
Yeah. And my bookkeeper's already talking about the auditing process. So yeah, it won't be painless.
No, it will not be painless. Nothing with the government is painless.
I've laid off staff with no intention of rehiring until we reopen, and my rent has been reduced slightly by my landlord. What is the best type of forgiven loan to apply for?
Yeah, so if you're not going to bring the staff back and you don't think you're going to be operational before June 30th, then it probably doesn't make sense. The EIDL would probably make the most sense, but it's not going to be forgivable. The PPL, you'd qualify for that because you had payroll, but if you don't, the timing is what we don't know. So if you get your loan funded, let's say you get through the process now and you get funded May 1st, so that opens up an 8-week window from May 1st to June 30th, where you'd have to pay that payroll in those 2 months for it to be forgiven, and your headcount would have to be normal by June 30th. If you're not operational until June 1st, it's not all going to be forgivable either, because you just don't have enough time to get all that in there in 4 weeks now. So some of the timing is dependent, and is that all going to happen? Is that all going to work out? I just don't know.
Mhm. Are these laws state specific?
The state programs are, and the unemployment has to go through the state, so that's going to be state specific in how they run their programs. But the SBA, the 7A, 7B, both of those loans are federal and backed. They're both federally backed by the SBA.
If my income as a sole prop is eligible for PPP, what documentation is needed to prove my or how will it be determined?
They're going to want tax returns, financial statements, and bank statements.
What should we pay attention to for those of us needing to cover payroll for a chiropractic nonprofit?
It's a good question. There are programs. I'm not as up to speed on the nonprofit side as I am on the for-profit side. The EIDL still qualifies for private nonprofits. We've had some difficulty getting a specific definition of what a private nonprofit is, because that means different things and depending on which area of the government you're in. But the EIDL is 2.75% for nonprofits, whereas 3.75% for for-profits, and they also qualify for the PPP loan.
What about financial assistance for the amount of time it takes for business to go back to normal? If it will take time for people to start coming back in to receive chiropractic care?
Yeah, I'm certain, a lot of the service-based industries, we're gonna be able to open for business, but then it's gonna take time to ramp back up. That's why I think it's really important. Like even if we think this is just gonna last a month, and then we can open again, but it may take another month or two to build that book back up. I think people are gonna just be reluctant to come out, and that's why I think it's really important to apply for these loans and have some cash, to get through that period.
And also to prepare for another stimulus package, probably.
Right. Yeah, I think that's certain.
What's the typical payout period with these loans?
I believe they're fully funded. So on the EIDL, you can get that advance. It's funded within 3 days of being assigned to a loan officer. And then we're not sure, it depends on how, if you get a good, clean underwriting package to the loan officer, it should be pretty quick. If you're missing things in the loan package, if it's not connected, numbers are off or it's kind of messy, obviously, my fear is there's going to be so many of these packages going in. The loan officer looks at it and says, "Oh, you're missing your 2017 tax return," sends a request, puts it to the side, and you're going to sit there for a week or 2 weeks. So that's why I think it's really important to get a good package in.
Can you use loans to pay higher interest student loans?
You cannot use either loan to pay off other debt.
Okay.
Can I just a couple that are coming in, Lance?
Yep.
Still some confusion for me. If we have a 50-50 corporation, so I guess that is the entity, a 50-50 corporation.
Two owners.
I'm guessing that began operation January of this year. Can we apply for the PPL and we've got no salary?
If you have no salary, you're not going to have anything to qualify for the PPL. If it's a corporation and there's no payroll, I would apply for the EIDL, but there's nothing there for the PPL.
You got to prove the payroll, don't you?
Yeah, it's totally based on payroll.
Correct. So another one, if I get the 10K grants for EIDL, is it something I have to return? Can it be forgivable?
No, you do not have to return that. Even if you apply for the EIDL and you request that up to $10,000 grant, if you're turned down, let's say your credit score is 630 and they turn you down for the loan, you do not have to return that up to $10,000 grant.
And can you just talk to the EIDL and the grant, because there's some confusion. I got another question in earlier. I don't know if it's changed. If this is one of these things that's changed since Sunday. I got another question in, as I think it was stated on the last call that the way to get the $10,000 grant was to apply for the SBA disaster loan.
Correct.
That like the two were intertwined, but I think now.
Yes.
And I think now in one of our documents that we put out, you have to apply for the SBA forgiveness loan to access the 10,000, or did it change?
No, that's
Could
not correct.
could you just speak to that?
Yeah, so for the $10,000 grant, they're calling it an advance on the website, up to $10,000 advance. So at first we thought it was $10,000. You know, that's a given that it's going to be $10,000. Now it's up to $10,000. So we don't know if, you know, one person. We don't know. We don't know how they're going to determine if it's $1,000 or $10,000. We just don't know that right now. But there's that ambiguity has been added into the SBA documentation. So it's up to $10,000. When you apply for the EIDL on the SBA's website, there's, I think it's on the second screen, there's literally a checkbox that says, do you want to be considered for the advance, up to $10,000 advance? You just check that checkbox, and that puts you in, qualifies you for that up to $10,000 grant advance.
But
You do have to apply for the EIDL to be considered for that.
Can you just go for the grant by itself without applying for the?
No. Now you don't have to take the EIDL, and they can turn you down for the EIDL, but you have to apply for it to get that piece of it.
Okay. All right.
And that's directly through the SBA's website.
Did that change recently at all? Or was that always
It was
the case?
different the way it was done,
Right.
but it was streamlined late Sunday night in the way that it's applied for, but it was attached to the EIDL.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If I take owner draws from my paycheck and for my own paycheck, does that count as payroll?
Yeah. So self-employment earnings or
Okay.
you know, owner draws will count unless it's from a corporation.
Okay. And if it is from a corporation, can I go back and change my own pay structure so that it doesn't count, or that it does count?
Yeah. So the issue with that would be that you would you would have late payroll tax penalties, which are taken pretty seriously by the IRS. So I wouldn't recommend that. You know, I would look at you know, how you might be able to qualify as a sole proprietor. They include self-employed. They include 1099 subcontractors. So there's no penalty for a late 1099 if you qualify that way. So well, there are penalties for late 1099s. I don't want to say that there are penalties for late 1099s, but it's rare that we see those imposed.
Mhm.
But I would work with your tax professional. That's not tax advice. I would work with your tax professional to see if you can strategize a way to fix that.
I have an existing SBA loan from 2018 when I opened, 10-year repayment. I have $20K left of this in savings. Can I use these funds for payroll, rent, utilities, et cetera, and still qualify for forgiveness?
If they're paid, so for the forgiveness, you have to show, oh no, okay. So you would have to have the 7A loan for the forgiveness. You couldn't, there's no forgiveness attached to previous SBA loan programs. You'd have to have the 7A. They're not asking you to mark certain cash that's being used. You just have to pay those expenses, the payroll, rent, utilities in that 8-week window. So if you use that savings account to pay for it, that's probably fine. You can document that, but you'd have to have the 7A for it to be forgivable.
Mm-hmm. Do I have to be paying employees during closure to qualify?
Not necessarily during closure, but definitely during that 8-week window, starting with the funding of the 7A loan.
Okay. Is it true some government loans don't have to be repaid?
True. So we've got the forgivable piece. We've got states that have grants in addition to the federal level.
My associates are paid based on collections, or my employees are paid based on collections. I do pay into something that I can't read. At what point does it make sense to look into it's a capital L ampersands capital I limits, and I'm not sure what that is. Okay.
LNI. I'm not sure what LNI is.
Yeah, I wish I knew. Will I still be able to practice while receiving assistance?
Yeah, so you'd have the reduced unemployment. You know, if you're not practicing to full level, you could qualify for the reduced unemployment, and in both of the loan programs, you'd still qualify for while you're still working, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Are payments on loan tax deductible?
our payments.
Are
So
loan payments tax deductible?
the principal is not, the principal repayment is not deductible. The interest portion is always going to be deductible as a business expense.
Cool. Good. If I was to transfer my business, how to put a price on it?
Mm. That's tough right now to value that. I'm not a valuation expert by any stretch, so I'm sure there's plenty of brokers out there that could give you a really good idea what the market's like right now, and how to value that. I would not think this is a great time to put a practice on the market.
Mm. Can I still do any of this if I am an employee?
Yes, the unemployment would definitely, you'd still qualify for the unemployment for reduced or total unemployment. You have the opportunity, if you need to withdraw retirement funds from an IRA or a 401k, you can even borrow from a 401k without penalty. And then you have 3 years to either put that back into your retirement or stagger the tax payments over 3 years, the taxes that would be due on that. So that, not necessarily something I recommend, but definitely a benefit that's there right now.
We are a 90% insurance office. Is it better to stay on payroll to take in lingering collections in combo with relief funds, or put associates or employees on unemployment and direct funds toward overhead?
Yeah, I'd kind of map that out. It's hard to say without knowing more information about the business specifically. I'm sure the insurance payments are going to trickle in. I would look for the support. Like I said, even if you lay everybody off, if their work isn't there, and I think that's what I would use to determine whether you keep them on, is whether the work is there, or it just makes sense to let them take unemployment. But if you need an admin person to go in every day and get the checks and the mail, I don't know if that's how it's done. But obviously you'd want to keep that person on payroll. But if there's other people, you might need to lay them off just to preserve cash and know that they have benefits.
When should we stop payroll if our employees are based on collections and direct them to collect unemployment?
So I've had both sides of that conversation this week, where some business owners, and this is somewhat a personality thing, where some business owners say, I'm just going to lay everybody off. I think it's easier and safer for the employees. Let them take unemployment. There's good unemployment benefits right now. When we open back up, hopefully I can bring them all back on. And then there's other business owners that have said, you know what, I'm not laying them off. I've been in business for 18 years. I've never laid anyone off. I'm not going to lay anyone off now. I'm going to figure out how to make it work. I'm going to keep everybody on payroll. So, most people are in between there somewhere, but it's somewhat of a personal decision. I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA, so my advice leans toward preserving cash, so that there's a business for them to come back to, a healthy business that can start back up and be able to employ the same people and run the same business that was there before.
Am I able to apply and use this loan if I own an LLC?
Yes. Yeah, no difference.
Good. Can we use the money to partially supplement our associates' pay? They are all on commission base only, but are not making their regular money.
Gotcha. Yeah. So again, you could partially pay them if you want, and then they would be able to qualify for unemployment based on partial pay.
If we go on unemployment, do we simply put our collections or checks aside, or can we continue to deposit them?
Excuse me. In the business, I think you would continue to deposit those and put those in the bank. That might be a gray area that I wouldn't want to venture into if you're receiving money but holding it and not depositing it.
If we are applying for unemployment and receiving checks, but still servicing care that we've already been paid for, is that okay?
Yeah, I don't see an issue with that because you're already reporting that income that was earned. So you're being transparent there.
Do I have to do anything to declare the office as closed, or simply stop working and apply for unemployment?
That'll be, based on your state's unemployment office, what documentation they want to see that you're no longer operational. If you're saying, we're 100% shut down, we want 100% unemployment, I don't know what documentation they would want to substantiate that.
If you were already planning on taking out a business loan in the near future, is now the best time to do it?
Um, So my fear in that would be that the banks are just going to be overwhelmed with the 7A loans. I have a client I talked with earlier today that they just took a line of credit yesterday just to be sure. And then they're applying for the 7A loan in addition to that, just to make sure they have plenty of cash flow. So can you still get a line of credit next week? Maybe, probably. I'm not really sure. Like I said, my concern is that the banks are just going to be overwhelmed with the requests for the 7A loans.
What are common issues that you're noticing from chiropractors that you're working with?
Clearly that it's very difficult to work hands-on with patients with social distancing, and most are shut down and revenue is stopped. So again, my advice is just apply for what you can, apply for what's out there right now. We don't know what else is coming or when, and just give yourself the best shot to weather the storm and come out healthy on the other side.
Great.
Where are you at with your list, Lance?
I got 6 left.
6 left. This is a good. You're okay, James?
I'm good. That was a big list.
Yeah,
I feel accomplished.
Have you? This one keeps cropping up. People keep asking, is there any reason applying for either of these loans now will disqualify us for better forgiveness or SBA loans in the near future? I think people are thinking like, if I apply for something now and when they bring out some other stimulus and there's another package come in, am I going to lose out? I think the fear is. You probably can't answer the question, but it's a common question.
It's very possible. I have no idea what's going to be in the next stimulus package. I do think this money is going to go pretty quick. There's going to have to be another stimulus package. Maybe it's written in the next package that, if you got a forgivable loan, you're not going to qualify for the next loan. I just have no idea. If you feel, I've definitely talked to people who they're like, we're good on cash. We've always been cash is king mentality. We don't have any debt. We're set to weather this. We don't need these loans. And if that's your situation, that's fine. And you would know that. But I would be, I would want to have at least 3 months, if not 6 months of operating expenses in cash or a line of credit to take that approach.
Okay.
Mind if I jump in?
Yep.
All right. Is there any considerations I should know about as a service-disabled veteran-owned business?
Not that I know of. I don't know of any preferential treatment in either of the packages, but that's certainly something we're keeping an eye on.
Is there a difference between the SBA emergency loan and the EIDL?
No, they're the same. That's the 7B, the EIDL, the emergency loan. That's all the same.
Do employees need to be laid off to qualify for PPL, or can they be working very reduced hours? And how does this affect their unemployment benefits?
So those two aren't mutually exclusive. The maximum loan amount for the PPL is calculated based on the previous 12 months, or actually the 2019 total payroll divided by 12 times 2.5. So that's how you come up with that PPL amount. If they're laid off right now, they can take unemployment. That doesn't change the amount of the PPL that you get. For it to be forgivable, however, it's back to that calculation of once the loan is funded, you've got 8 weeks, and then to the extent that you spend it on payroll, rent, utilities, then it's forgivable.
Great. Last question is, can you share links to apply for these different programs when they're available? Which ones are they available now?
Yeah, then Craig will have the email out. We'll get that email out for the replay and the resource list that'll have all those links.
Great. There's a couple other ones that were above that I passed over, but I think they're quick. Should we have these are from chiropractic students. Any CPA recommendations in the Dallas-Fort Worth area?
Actually, I do have a great colleague in Dallas. This can be done from anywhere, in the country, but I
Yeah.
have 2 colleagues that are fantastic in Dallas I can recommend.
Cool. What practices that you recommend DCs were doing more? What do you think DCs need to be doing more? I think you answered that before with the DCs you're working with, DCs being doctors of chiropractic. What should we have a CPA or accountant? Should we have? Yes, you should have a CPA or accountant to keep books. At what stage,
Yeah,
maybe?
I
As
definitely
a student,
recommend that.
yeah. When should you get a bookkeeper or CPA? If you're just getting out of school and you're going to start your business, is that the first person you call? That's in the first 5.
I don't know that needs. Well, it depends on the type of person that you are. If you're a pretty organized person that can get, I don't recommend spreadsheets. I recommend, the minimum QuickBooks Online. If you can get that set up and started and get the expenses and the revenue captured, that's great. You kind of know who you are. If that's not your strength, if you'd rather be on your feet helping people, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring an accountant or a bookkeeper in early and set it up properly, get the bank feeds set up, do the accounting, and you can grow your business a lot better if you have good accounting.
Yep. Any tax advantages that a non-owner can utilize at this time?
The best, the benefit or relief is going to be through unemployment. You have the option of taking retirement out if you need that to supplement unemployment, but those are going to be the primary ones for non-owner.
Cool. Those are all the questions I have on our list.
What a
All right,
lot of questions. I guess everything that's changed since Sunday. We're now on Wednesday. Anything that's changed since Sunday, you probably covered on this call. Is there anything additional, James? That any nuance, anything additional that you'd like to mention? Because with this video, will go out to everybody, over 1,000 people.
The only thing we didn't mention today that isn't necessarily a change, but we didn't mention it, is the deferral of payroll taxes. So starting today, April 1st, through the end of this year, owners, the business can defer payroll taxes for 2 years and not pay them in 2020. I don't necessarily recommend that because I see too many people get behind on payroll taxes and it creates problems. But if you need that additional benefit, that one is there as well. But those are the main changes. I think we covered, like the changes in interest rates, the changes in some of the terminology and how it's applied for, and the forgivable pieces. I think we covered all those changes today. It's a good call.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
Well, for those people listening, I know, Lance, for your group of people, you get the message out, but as everybody can see, it's a pretty confusing subject. I've stopped even looking at it or thinking about it because I just get brain damage every time I look at it, and then it's all changed, or the words have changed, or something's changed. So you're on our list. For anybody watching, we will get the playbook to you, so you've got the links, you've got the resources that James has kindly put together. James also is you're in top. We didn't probably even mention it, but there's top 200 CPAs in the country for head coach of. Well, because we just want to get straight into the Q&A. But you're the head coach of that 200 group. They're all 7-figure plus companies,
Right.
And there's a whole team of 6 people right now that are just dedicated on the phone to the SBA, the IRS, banks, just trying to figure out what are the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's going to be a mixed bag of people, Lance. You're going to have people who want to do it themselves. You're going to have people that are confused, or larger sort of business operators that have got either multi-locations or large sort of facilities and want somebody just to take the headache away from them. Well, James is the man. James will do a 10-minute assessment on the call. I'm saying this on your behalf, James. I mean, toot him whenever you want, but because I've been helping James out with this.
Yeah, you know the process now.
Yeah, I know the process down, but you get a phone quick 10 minutes. James will say, yes, you're eligible for this, you're eligible for that. We can help you with this, we can help you with that. And for a consultancy fee, because that's, what have accountants or lawyers got to offer? Time. A bit like your industry, you just got time to offer. So for a consultancy fee, which ranges between 2,500 and 4,800 is the range, to get to get everything done for you, to peel back the layers of the onion. As you can see, everybody's business is very different. There's a lot of nuances, there's a lot of complications, there's a lot of, if you do this, you have to do this. But if you apply for that, you can't apply for this. I mean, it's crazy stuff, but if you want a professional like James, we do have programs available. We will put them in the, we will get those out to your folk and everybody else. You can then apply to work with James and then get on that phone call, figure out whether we can help you, James can help you, then go from there, which then goes to a discovery call where you get on a call with a professional person, whether that be James or one of his team members, who will figure out exactly what you need to do, put a plan of action together for your specific company, your specific situation. So I found, because I've done hundreds of calls now, I've been helping James with the calls just because of the overload of volume of people that want to speak. So I just find people fall into a couple of camps. I'm going to attempt and go and do it myself. Well, here's the playbook, here's the resource book, or I just don't want the hassle and the brain damage. I just want it done for me. And that's where a professional like James's company comes in to be able to take that away from you and handle it so you can go and play golf or whatever you want to do. So I hope that's been, I thank you, James. I thank you, Lance, for putting this on to your folks.
Yeah, thank you guys for being so responsive and being willing to step up. I know you guys have been busy nonstop and doing this, but that makes us really comfortable knowing it's coming from you guys who are on a team of 6, kind of at the cutting edge of the information that's coming down.
Well,
by
not
the time
a team
it
of 6.
trickles to us.
Let me just qualify that. Not just 6. There's over 200 in the group working on this. There's just a team of 6 just dedicated solely to talking with the banks, SBA, IRS, just solely that job to figure things out, not deliver the service or do all the other normal accounting.
Yeah.
You know, that's just dedicated to what on earth's going on and how do you figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm grateful to have gotten this opportunity with you guys again, even since Sunday, since I did it, because the information is changing, but some of the things that seem true are the action steps you said in that webinar are the same. You know, get out and apply for the loans. Things are going to change rapidly. The money's going to disappear or another stimulus package is going to happen. But the faster we can at least get our name in the hat, the faster the money can start coming in. And whether we choose to keep the loans or not, that's up to us. But if we can qualify for the grant, that's a great thing too.
Super.
Yeah, I agree. It gives that safety. And I think that's going to be really important.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Good stuff. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks. I feel complete. Appreciate you guys. Everyone out there, love you. See you soon.
Thanks,
Good night. Keep safe, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.